welcome to Arts Express. This is Prairie Miller, and on the show, they'd throw me off the air if I told you what I thought. I would never be able to do another show on this planet. Pacifica host Garland Nixon apologizes for getting a little carried away.
Good evening. My name is Garland Nixon. Lots of things going on. All right, let us continue. What has happened this week in the news? I would say the big one is Israel. Let's talk about that. So for the past 16 months, there's been, what a lot of people and courts of international law have found probable cause, reasonable suspicion, all those kind of things to believe that a genocide has been occurring against the Palestinians. Terrible, horrific. Think people like me and lost sleep, shed tears, literally over this stuff. It's been absolutely terrible, heartbreaking, heart-wrenching crime against humanity. So let me just tell you where I'm coming from, so you'll hear from me. So from my perspective, that was one of the main reasons I despised the Biden administration and the Democratic Party. I already didn't like the Republican Party. I'm not either one, but I had a special despicable nature. I mean, I can't, if there's no words in the English language to communicate the hate in my heart. And I'm a person with only love in my heart, so I don't feel good about this. The hate in my heart towards the Biden administration and the Democratic Party as a whole. Hatred, pure, unadulterated, evil hatred to the core of my heart. And I do not exaggerate as to how I felt about Joe Biden and everybody around him and the Democratic Party as a whole, based on the fact that I'm looking online and I'm seeing children blown to pieces. I'm seeing tents bombed. I'm seeing people burned to death. I'm seeing the most horrible thing. I will never, till the longest day I live, have anything in my heart but hatred for the Democratic Party. Now, I don't like the Republican Party. Disagree with them. They're imperialists. They're just another, they ain't going to do nothing for the working man. So I don't like the Republican Party. But this Democrat-led genocide, it aroused something in me that I didn't even know was there. That's the level of hatred, an evil, fiendish hatred that I hate to admit is there, but I got to admit it's there because, if I have one child, a child, and I had to think about. So I look online and this child that's got torn to pieces, and I'm thinking about my daughter getting torn to pieces, burned alive, whatever, right? Pregnant people running with children, shrapnel killing them, brains blown out. And so I'm thinking about all this. And I've cried, Why should I have to cry? I'm supposed to be a tough guy, ex-cop, working out in the gym, you throwing punches and martial arts, and I'm Joe Tough Guy. My favorite movie is Predator. I'm Mr. Tough Guy. Tears running out of my eyes. Do you know how angry that made me, and still is to this date? So that's where I am. And then I don't even know how to word this. I was convinced that Donald Trump was just going to double down. Trump's going to come in here and do the same thing. That's what I felt. He ain't going to do nothing different. He's in the pockets of AIPAC and blah, blah, blah. So the other day, Donald Trump sends his boy, Smitkoff, whatever the guy's name is. The guy goes to Israel on behalf of Trump and says to Israel, you will accept a ceasefire. And they said, okay. He forced them to do it. And I'm thinking, 16 months and Joe Biden wouldn't or couldn't? Inexcusable. It made me even more angry. The Democrats are done. They're done. How could they do this to this crime against humanity? And I got to watch Kamala Harris. Oh, no matter what, I'm supporting Israel. And then Trump comes along. He's the evil guy. He's the bad guy. He's going to do terrible things. And he ends it. How bad do the Democrats look now? How bad does the Biden administration look now? They're done. They're done. Turn the lights off. Put the flag down when you leave DNC headquarters. It's done. Man, this burns me up. I mean, I'm thrilled when I saw Palestinians celebrating, but the Israelis are still going to do terrible and evil, horrible things. But I'm saying they got something more paper in. I don't even know what to say. Blinken. And boy, if that guy is not a sociopath, there's no such thing. You know what I mean? The man has the emotions of a rock. He is, I mean, he is a sick and twisted person to me. I mean, he is as bad as the Biden administration is, he is the worst part of it. A very sick and murderous man. So I despise Blinken, and I am very happy. There was Max Blumenthal, there was Sam Husseini, and there was another woman who screamed at him and called him bloody Blinken and all that. So to me, what a wonderful day when people degrade and humiliate Anthony Blinken. The only sad thing is his mind is so crooked and twisted, and he's such a sociopath that he cannot possibly understand that there could possibly be accountability for his actions or that he even did anything wrong. That's how sick that man is. But for the rest of us, we get some joy to see him humiliated. I'm happy about that. And I believe this. In the same way that the United States is sanctioned Venezuela, 99% of its oil revenue was eliminated. So the United States sanctioned Venezuela, eliminated 99% of its revenue, and then said, Venezuela's government doesn't work and Maduro can't do a good job. You eliminated 99% of their stuff. So they destroyed their economy and then said, socialism doesn't work. That's the game. They couldn't do it to China. China's a socialist country, working pretty good. They took out Cuba and Venezuela's economy just so they could say socialism doesn't work, because they're afraid that in some countries it quite does work if that's what the people want, such as Vietnam, such as Nicaragua, such as China, on and on and on. And the United States didn't want people to have that choice. You know, there are a lot of people that believe that whether it's Congress or the president, that those people are not the real power, that they work for the real power, that they're there so we can't see the people who really are in power, right? Are there parties? Yes. Do the parties have some kind of an ideological alignment with what they want? Yes. But there is real power that you can't see. Now, take Larry Fink. Larry Fink runs BlackRock. BlackRock has $9 trillion in asset. Let me ask you this. If he calls the president and says, I want you to do this or that, you think it ain't gonna happen? You know what I mean? So the truth is, yes, I agree to a large extent. There are very powerful people. The United States is an oligarchy. The people we don't run this country. The billionaires run this country. So there's a lot to be said. There are a lot of people in history who have said that, and there's a whole lot to it. I'm furious, man. Well, I'm telling you, for the rest of my life, if somebody just says the word Democrat, I don't ever want to see any. I don't even. If I see a donkey, I'll probably run for my life. If I go to a petting zoo and they got a donkey, I'll probably run out and run in front of a car and get hit. Literally, I'm traumatized. Literally traumatized me. That's not a joke. I'm traumatized. I've been through trauma, and I think a lot of people of goodwill in this world to see people being starved. To see people without water, to see people say, I think these people, I saw this video the other day and somebody was interviewing these two Israeli women. And they were saying, well, what about, they're killing children and stuff. And the women said, well, we don't care because there's no innocent people there. They'd throw me off the air if I told you what I thought. If I said what I was thinking at the time, I would never be able to do another show on this planet. I had such fury to watch human beings say, I don't care. All of these men, women, babies, children, they're not innocent. Slaughter them all. And I'm thinking, and I thought Nazi Germany was over. Something at least as bad as Nazi Germany is upon us. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, the Biden administration, what a bloodthirsty group. Over their 4 years, the number of lives that have been lost, and they won't do nothing to try to stop any of it. It is a criminal on a level that I can't even imagine. And now people are walking away from the party. And I know there's people of the party listening. You're bloodthirsty fiends. Why would anybody vote for a bunch of bloodthirsty monsters? I'm sorry, I got a little carried away.
And coming up next on Arts Express.
She was the most desirable and famous woman in the world.
You are the wife of the President of the United States.
born to privilege and position. He had been born a peasant, but became one of the world's richest men. His power, his money, his women, all made international headlines.
Married. I am married. And you are married. And like it is the only way. Next time you go into deal, you go in with a loaded gun. That's the way to deal. I mean, that's trade. That's commerce. Partners.
To some, he was a pirate, a ruthless profiteer. But when these two came together, the world stopped to watch. Anthony Quinn, Jacqueline Bisset, the Greek tycoon.
Come on in, it's wonderful.
Work. Fantastic. If ever I offend you.
And how could you offend me, Theo?
I will, Lizzie. I will.
You're a clown! And a bore!
And vulgar and common and an animal. And you are fantastic. God, what a woman.
Is that why you married her? Because she's the most famous woman in the world.
Federal warrant, Mr. Tomastis, you're under arrest.
You figured it all out, didn't you?
What?
The man who married the widow of our assassinated president. How could we put you in jail?
This is the story that captures the power and intrigue that surrounded the most famous woman in the world.
And those were scenes from The Greek Tycoon, a fictionalized 1978 drama of the alternately steamy and stormy relationship between Aristotle Onassis, portrayed by Anthony Quinn, and Jacqueline Bisset as Jackie Kennedy. And Bisset is our guest on the show today, talking about how her favorite scene in any movie was fighting with Anthony Quinn, along with revisiting her prolific career and her latest film, Loren and Rose, a kind of contemporary sequel to the classic My Dinner with Andre, as questions about art and existence across 2 generations and across the dinner table are pursued. Bisset phones in from LA with a personal update on the fires there, following some scenes from Loren and Rose.
Through it all, I saw a spectre emerge. It was death. I heard it roar. And then I felt a gentle, healing spirit breathing life back into me. And a woman's deep voice whispered, "You have power. Never give it away."
She was due her comeback, a great talent waiting to be unleashed again.
This place is an institution.
How long have you been coming here?
About 15 years.
It's your own Rick's Cafe.
And I'll get down to brass tacks. You know, the actress Jean Moreau said, for some people, cinema means something superficial and glamorous. But I think it is the mirror of the world. Never tell anyone. Never look for me. I think you should look for another actress.
Did you tell him?
I somehow can't do it.
My beautiful Rose.
Stand tall, Loren. Be an artist. I've always let so much come in the way, but you don't have to. Visi d'arte, visi d'amore. Live for art, live for love.
Hello.
Nice to be here.
Hello, Jacqueline Bisset, and welcome to our show.
Thank you.
You're calling in from LA. Is there anything you can say about what's been happening out there with the fires
Oh.
and staying positive in the midst of it?
Well, I must say, I live in a canyon, and it's absolutely terrifying when you realize I've been talking about this for years and saying it's one of my big worries is to be stuck in the middle of a fire coming down this canyon. And it's so overgrown, and there's such old growth, and so dry right now that I've been moving around. In fact, I took myself out of LA for 4 days. I went up to Ventura to try and get away for feeling. Plus, the air is not good. But what's happened in Pacific Palisades is it's just so terrible for the people. And so many people have lost their houses. People were giving me some estimates of how many people. It's just beyond. Funnily enough, I was at a house that has just finished at a 100th year birthday party 1 week ago, and that house is no longer there.
Oh.
That was a real shocker, having spent that evening, a lovely house that was really pleasant, full of well-loved objects, and now to the ground. The people have taken off, and God knows where they went.
Yeah. Now, what was it about Rose that drew you to this character and this story, Loren and Rose, in the film?
Oh, it's a wonderful character. It's a wonderful part. It's so well written. And, oh my goodness, I don't know how I could have turned it down. I read it and I thought, this is pretty complex.
And did you draw anything from your own life and as an actress to portray Rose and contribute any of your own ideas or content to the film?
Well, there's a lot of things that, a lot of realities about this sort of stuff that happens to actors, and finding a role, finding yourself on location, finding that you're not getting on with the director, all the ups and downs of the thing happen to, I think, pretty much everybody, I suspect. I don't think anybody walks a really clean line through all that. You have to, your ego gets smashed and lifted and so on. You have to deal with it, and you've got to, in my opinion, very important to get your ego down so you can be obedient to a certain degree and take direction, even if you don't particularly like it. I mean, as a human, one has the right to protest, but it doesn't really work out like that. There's a lot of discipline necessary if you want to be a successful actor.
You started out in Two for the Road with Audrey Hepburn. What are your memories of Hepburn, artistically, personally, and co-starring with her?
I wasn't co-starring. I had a very small part. She was an enormous name for me to be in a movie with Audrey Hepburn. I mean, I'd done few things. I'd worked with Roman Polanski, and I'd done another little film. But to see her discipline, and to see how little she ate at lunchtime, I mean, that really impressed me. It really impressed me because, she was very, very thin, and she had to keep changing and wearing everything beautifully. And she never talked about any of that stuff. But she was pleasant to me. But we didn't get close. It wasn't a question of getting close. I was just a little bit like in a sense, an extra in my little part. And I did get to eat Audrey Hepburn's food, though. See, in the weekends, sometimes she'd have a cook-up and make very fattening pasta with cream and all kinds of things. And I thought, oh, thank God she's human.
And you've said that your favorite scene in a film was fighting with Anthony Quinn in The Greek Tycoon. How so, and what are your memories of Anthony Quinn?
Oh, well, Anthony, the whole thing of male stars, I mean, I worked with a lot of male stars, and they all did fine. But Anthony Quinn was a guy you felt that you could just give him hell, and he wasn't going to be affected. And he was not going to get hurt. His feelings were not going to get all, she was rude or something. I just was able to go for it. And in the scene, I mean, that was the scene. So I went for it, and I kicked at him, and he was a big, strong, very masculine-looking man, and I think probably a very masculine person. And he just smiled when I was doing my tirade, and I just loved it because you're not always. I think you do have to be. You're affected by everybody you meet. So if somebody gives you the sense that they're timid or that they're fragile, a little as a man, you don't know how sometimes if you can go for broke. That's just my feeling, but I think it's probably true. And he really was the one I felt I could. But most of the male actors you work with, unless you have an extremely large role, you really don't get into these issues, really. You sort of, in the early days of the kind of roles I was given in Hollywood, I was the sort of semi-girlfriend type roles, which I was thrilled to get, though I was later criticized for them, but that's just way people can never be happy about anything. But I really learned the way they behaved. That was very important to me. And if they were kind, and if they listened, once again, and if they got what you were doing, and they usually did, I didn't have any ghastly sort of toss-ups. I remember a writer on The Detective being rather impolite to me, and Frank Sinatra saying, "Leave the kid alone. She has good instincts." And that was a major coup for me. I thought, well, there you go. Now there's a real man. and he, the writer just backed off, and so Sinatra was extremely polite, and his image, which was enormous, became very real to me. He was not in a happy state. He was going through a divorce with his wife, and it was not a happy time, but he was extremely pleasant and a little bit sad.
And prior to Hollywood, you've said that your most fulfilling experience was being directed by Truffaut in Day for Night. How so?
No, I don't think I said that. I mean, it was
it's a quote floating around somewhere.
No, but it was an incredible honor for me to work with François Truffaut. I knew his work. He was a very, very well-known artistic director with a real world that was his. And to be invited into it, I was just stunned, because it was something I dreamt about and I never thought it would happen. So to be invited in as the sort of leading lady of that story, apart from the fact that I had to speak French, which I didn't speak, so that was a bit of a hiccup. I had to work really hard, and I had said to him, "You cannot change a word. If you change a word, you've got to give my words to me at least 3 days before, otherwise I'm going to make bumbly, and get completely paralyzed." So he took that, and he understood that working in another language is not easy.
And how do you feel about the story of Loren and Rose in the real world surrounding these characters, and you coming from a time when there was such a creative energy, a renaissance in music and film, while today it's so problematic for youth, endless wars, and the corporate-controlled arts and film? Do you see that at all as influencing these two characters on some level?
Oh, I would imagine that when in the younger part of her life, when she was a bit of a troubled soul, she would have been affected. I think she was an independent for sure. And I don't know how you can live in the world without being. I personally have always been quite interested in politics and more in the movement of people's desires or wishes. I don't know the details often. I didn't know it when I was young about the Republicans and the Democrats. There was in England, it wasn't that system. I always thought humanity was the key thing, and I always thought, you must behave the way you hope to be. You behave to others as you hope to be treated. That was my basic religion, and I tried to put that into place, and I didn't. It was okay. I mean, I wasn't often treated badly. I had a little problem with trying to keep producers from trying to get me to wear less clothing, but I didn't like that. But that was hard to deal with. So I was extremely shy, and I must say I still am. So that was something that I had to deal with. And so I used to have contracts that always had that phrase in it that they couldn't do that. It didn't stop them from trying for certain scenes.
Yeah.
And I'm just very distracted by what's going on in the world. I mean, the world, I feel like we're in a complete chaos.
But we are. Yeah.
The wars and the terror of what's going on. I mean, plus this new Trump second term, I have to say, it really puts the wind up me a little bit. I hope that he will do a good job. I mean, one must be positive. If he's going to be in, let's hope he does a good job. But for me, I'm not an American citizen, but, I hope that what he has on the list will not cause too much agony and pain to all the people who might get put out of the country and things like that. I mean, this is an awful issue.
Yeah. And especially because this is radio, when Jacqueline Bisset looks in the mirror, what does she see?
Oh, well, I see It depends. It depends what I eat, what I drink. Completely depends on that. My looks are totally, if I eat salty food, and most food has got salt in it, I look pretty bad in the morning. But if I exercise, to some degree that helps. But basically, if I need to look really good, I've got to stay away from salt because it helps me. And I eat basically a vegetarian type diet and move my body a bit. But I don't worry about it too much because I think, you don't want to. It's not about. You're not a model. You don't have to be perfect. And in fact, what I feel so true is true that so many times when you do a role where you look really bad, they say, "Oh, that was a brave performance," which means you look like hell when they say it's a brave performance, and it makes me laugh. I've enjoyed the roles when I was allowed to be a little off, and I felt very comfortable. Because heaven knows we all get put together step by step, and when we have to look really beautiful, it's a terrible pressure, and not always one that one wants or that one can manage. And the beauty level from so many young women now, with all the knowledge that they've got from whatever they get it from, so many people look absolutely wonderful. I think they worry too much about perfection. I do think they don't really. I don't think women really understand that, in fact, they're worried about pleasing men, but I don't think that's what men necessarily relate to. I think they relate to energy. Of course, women who fascinate men are usually fascinated by the men. That helps the women to gain ground. And I think to be interesting, because I think to be beautiful and boring must be terrible for men. And there's a lot of people who go on about stuff, and it's just of no interest to men. I mean, I'm not a sports fan at all. I mean, I can barely talk about sports for like a minute and a half. So I avoid it. Yeah. I don't know enough about it.
Okay, thank you so much, Jacqueline Bisset, for joining us on the show. And I will get the word out about Loren and Rose.
Oh, please do. I love that film so much. Yeah. It was such a meaningful film for me. It was a great honor.
Okay. And
thank you.
And be safe in the fires there.
Oh, I hope to.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
And coming up next on the show, likewise a possible victim of the LA fires was visionary film legend David Lynch, who passed away there last Wednesday as he struggled with debilitating emphysema. Jack Clark shares personal memories of Lynch's impact on his own art and life. But first, Lynch, his little-known start as a visual artist, palpable in his final on-screen appearance in The Fabelmans, a biographical drama by Steven Spielberg, and Spielberg as a young man in his strange encounter with Lynch, portraying another legend, John Ford, as to what film and art are all about.
They tell me you want to be a picture maker.
Yes, sir, I do.
Why? This business, it'll rip you apart.
Well, Mr. Ford,
So what do you know about art, kid?
I love your movie so much.
No art. See that painting over there?
Yeah. I mean, yes. Yes, I do see it.
Walk over to it. Well, what's in it? Describe it.
Oh, okay. So there are two guys, and they're on horseback, and they're looking for something, so maybe they're scouting.
No. Where's the horizon?
The horizon?
Where is it?
It's at the bottom.
That's right. Walk over to this painting. Well?
Right, okay, so there are 5 cowboys, you know...
No. Where's the goddamn horizon?
It's there.
Where?
At the top of the painting.
All right, get over here. Now remember this. When the horizon's at the bottom, it's interesting. When the horizon's at the top, it's interesting. When the horizon's in the middle, it's boring as Now, good luck to you. And get the out of my office.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Good evening and welcome to the UK desk for Arts Express with me, your host, Jack Clark. And to start this one, I'm going to play for you what may be the final words we ever hear from the legendary filmmaker, David Lynch.
May everyone be happy. May everyone be free of disease. May auspiciousness be seen everywhere. May suffering belong to no one. Peace. J. Gurudev.
Hearing that, it's heavy, innit? Because those words, whatever they might be, are now etched into the fabric of what he left behind. His art, his world, his understanding of ours. My first encounter with David Lynch and his work wasn't on TV or through one of his interviews where he looks directly at you like he's reading your soul. No, it was through his film Mulholland Drive. I mean, I was a teenager on some late night quest to find something very different, and different is putting it lightly when you reference his work. The opening scenes were surreal. They were disorientating. I remember sitting there wondering, am I watching the wrong film? Did I press the wrong button? But then something strange happened. The film pulled me in. By the time it ended, I was shaken in a way I'd never been shaken before by a film. It wasn't just the puzzle box narrative or the nightmarish imagery. It was the feeling, this underlying dread, this beauty, this sadness. It was like being given a window into someone else's dream, someone else's subconscious, right? And it stayed with me for weeks, for months. I joke about it with people back then, well, guess I'm never sleeping properly again. But honestly, what struck me was how it made me question things about myself, about the stories we tell ourselves to survive, about the masks we wear to navigate the world. That film didn't just make me love cinema more, it made me love it differently. And then I discovered Eraserhead, that film that every single film bro will sit there and quote to you in a film meeting. Now, as someone who grew up on a damp, mold-infested council estate in Salford, Eraserhead felt like a revelation. Here was a film made for practically nothing, yet it felt bigger, more profound than anything I'd ever seen. It was haunting. It was absurd. It was so intensely personal. And knowing the story behind it, that Lynch spent years making this film, scraping together whatever resources he could, fighting for every frame. I mean, it did something to me. It showed me that you didn't need a Hollywood budget or a super polished studio to create something meaningful. David Lynch gave me permission, in a way, to believe in myself, to believe that my ideas, no matter how weird or unsettling or out of place they might seem, could have value. That I could make something even if I had next to nothing. That belief, I suppose, shaped me as a producer, as a creative, but more importantly as a human being. From there, I devoured his work. Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks, The Elephant Man, Lost Highway. Each one was like walking into a new world, yet it was always his world. The darkness of his suburbia, the uncanny horror lurking just underneath the surface of the ordinary. The sound design, making you feel things you just couldn't quite articulate. Of all his works, though, the one that lives in my mind, rent-free, completely uninvited and refusing to ever leave, is London Empire. Now, if Eraserhead is Lynch with a tight budget and Mulholland Drive is Lynch with a studio polish, Inland Empire is Lynch completely unfiltered, raw and feral. Watching it feels like stumbling to someone's subconscious without a map or a guide. It's 3 hours of pure chaos, grainy digital footage, overlapping timelines, Laura Dern giving a performance that swings between heartbreaking and downright terrifying. And there's something so wild, so brave about that. It's like Lynch said, you know what, forget structure, forget clarity. I'm just going to pour every single idea I've had into this one and see what happens. It's maddening, it's incomprehensible, and it's perfect. But here's the thing. Beneath the madness, Inland Empire feels the most honest version of Lynch, at least to me. It's messy and unsettling and hypnotic because it's not trying to be anything other than what it is. Watching it, you feel like you've been given access to a place most directors are too scared to show you. The raw, unfiltered guts of their creative mind. And as much as it messed with my head, and believe me, it did, I had nightmares about that Rabbit sitcom for weeks, but I still love it. It also lit something of a fire inside me. It reminded me that this creativity doesn't have to be so polished or perfect. Sometimes it's about embracing the weird in whatever platform it is for you, embracing the fragmented, the unfinished, and letting that speak for itself. I can't tell you how many times I've gone back to Inland Empire, partly because I feel like I still don't fully understand it, but mostly because it's one of the most inspiring things I've ever seen. It's a reminder that art doesn't have to make sense to everyone to matter. It just has to feel. And that's what Lynch did better than anyone else. He makes you feel, even if you can't explain why. I remember reading his autobiography, Room to Dream, and there was always this one line that really got me. I think human beings are wonderful, but I also see this darkness. That's what he gave us, a mirror to see both the light and the dark in ourselves. Over the past few days, I've been on phone with some other Lynch fans, friends, colleagues, people who, like me, feel like they owe a part of themselves to his work.
Myself, in my own artistic practice, being one of the most prolific, modern American surrealist filmmakers, spanning work all the way from the 80s till up until his death, they're really, really influential on me growing up, seeing them, because I think each one of his works kind of stands out compared to a lot of other cinema. I mean, as a kid, my uncle showed me the old 80s Dune long before any of this new Dune hype has popped up. And I remember watching it maybe at 12 years old. And I was enamored with it, and I watched it 3 or 4 times, especially with the worms and everything. Which then later on, as I got older, I'd watch his other films, and it made more of an impact. He's really, yeah.
All these directors who defined an era, who influenced today's generation, who reshaped how we perceive films, all of them are slowly fading away or have already left us. One of my classmates is a huge fan of his work. He's her absolute favorite director of all time, and she talks about him almost daily. We've had so many conversations about his films, and when I told her the news, tears immediately came to her eyes. She couldn't believe it, and she was completely devastated. I tried to articulate how strange I felt. Someone had passed away, someone I never met, someone I didn't truly know. I only interpreted his work through my own lens, and to be honest, I only really got into his films in the past few years. Yet it still hit me so hard. We always talk so casually about people, or in this case him, like this film reminds me of Lynch, or that style is so Lynchian, or even just Lynch is the best when it comes to surreal and enigmatic cinema. So yeah, these were my first thoughts after hearing the news, and they still make me deeply sad. It's always difficult to compare artists, and maybe we shouldn't, but I truly believe that we may never have someone like David Lynch again.
And, I mean, that's it, isn't it? Lynch made us feel seen, even in the strangest, darkest corners of our minds. He told us we weren't alone. So tonight, we say goodbye to David Lynch. But it's not really a goodbye, is it? Because he left us with so much. Not just his films, but his way of seeing the world. His reminder that we can dive deeper, that we can dream bigger, and that we can create with whatever we have. I'll end with a quote from David himself. One I think really sums up everything he stood for, at least for me. We think we understand the rules when we become adults, but what we really experience is a narrowing of the imagination. Thank you, David Lynch, for reminding us to keep imagining, to keep dreaming, to keep looking beyond the surface. Tonight, I raise 2 cookies and a Coke in your honor. This has been Jack Clark for Arts Express with your host, Prairie Miller.
Hi, this is Jack Shalom. In my hand, I am holding the ultimate hidden truth of the world. Yes, really. Well, that's the name of the new collection of essays by anthropologist David Graeber, one of the instigators of Occupy Wall Street, who coined the slogan, "We are the 99%. Well, Graeber died not long ago, unfortunately, too young, but Nika Dubrovsky has now come out with a collection of 18 of Graeber's essays called The Ultimate Hidden Truth of the World. And not to keep anyone in suspense, here's the spoiler alert on that title. For Graeber, a proud anarchist, the ultimate hidden truth of the world was that the world is something that we make and could just as easily make differently. Graeber's essays here, some of which were the seeds for later full-length books, are on a broad range of topics: bullying, mutual aid, the power of play, debt, useless jobs, and even an essay on why cops get PO'd at giant puppets at demonstrations. Yes, it's a disparate list, but Graeber has a way of starting from some small fact or experience and expanding on it in order to reveal larger truths. Because the essays are so wide-ranging, I'll just focus on one that particularly resonated with me and I think may resonate with many of our listeners. So I'm going to read a selection of a Graeber essay called Dead Zones of the Imagination that will give you a flavor of Graeber's writing and thinking. Graeber writes, "Let me begin with a brief story about bureaucracy. Over the last year, my mother had a series of strokes. It soon became obvious that she would eventually be incapable of living at home without assistance. Since her insurance would not cover home care, a series of social workers advised us to put in for Medicaid. And to qualify for Medicaid, however, one's total worth can amount to only $6,000. We arranged to transfer her savings. This was, I suppose, technically a scam, so it's a peculiar sort of scam since the government employs thousands of social workers whose main work seems to be telling citizens how to do it. But shortly thereafter, she had another very serious stroke and found herself in a nursing home undergoing long-term rehabilitation. When she emerged from there, she would definitely need home care, but there was a problem. Her Social Security check was being deposited directly. She was barely able to sign her name. So unless I acquired power of attorney over her account and was not able to pay her monthly rent bills for her, the money would immediately build up and disqualify her, even after I filled out the enormous raft of Medicaid documents I needed to file to qualify her for pending status. I went to her bank, picked up the requisite forms, and brought them to the nursing home. The documents needed to be notarized. The nurse on the floor informed me there was an in-house notary, but I needed to make an appointment. She picked up the phone and put me through to a disembodied voice, who then transferred me to the notary. The notary proceeded to inform me that I first had to get authorization from the head of social work and hung up. So I acquired his name and room number and duly took the elevator downstairs, appeared at his office, only to discover he was in fact the disembodied voice on the phone. The head of social work picked up the phone and said, "Marjorie, that was me. You're driving this man crazy with this nonsense, and you're driving me crazy too," and proceeded to secure me an appointment for early the next week. The next week, the notary duly appeared, went with me upstairs, made sure I filled out my side of the form as had been repeatedly emphasized to me, and then, in my mother's presence, proceeded to fill out her own. I was a little puzzled that she didn't ask my mother to sign anything, only me, but I figured she must know what she was doing. The next day, I took it to the bank, where the woman at the desk took one look, asked why my mother hadn't signed it, and showed it to her manager, who told me to take it back and do it right. Apparently, the notary had no idea what she was doing. So I got new forms, filled out my side of each, and made a new appointment. On the appointed day, the notary duly appeared, and after some awkward remarks about the difficulties caused by having each bank having its own completely different power of attorney form, we proceeded upstairs. I signed, my mother signed with some difficulty, and the next day I returned to the bank. Another woman at a different desk examined the forms and asked why I had signed the line where it said to write my name and printed my name on the line where it said to sign. I did. Well, I just did exactly what the notary told me to do. But it says clearly signature here. Oh, yes, it does, doesn't it? I guess she told me wrong again. Well, all the information is still there, isn't it? It's just those 2 bits that are reversed, so is it really a problem? It's kind of pressing, and I'd really rather not have to wait to make another appointment. Well, normally we don't even accept these forms without all the signatories being here in person. My mother had a stroke. She's bedridden. That's why I need power of attorney in the first place. She said she checked with the manager, and after 10 minutes returned, with the manager hanging just within earshot in the background, and she announced the bank could not accept the forms in their present state, and in addition, even if they were filled out correctly, I would still need a letter from my mother's doctor certifying that she was mentally competent to sign such a document. I pointed out that no one had mentioned any such letter previously. What? The manager suddenly interjected. Who gave you those forms and didn't tell you about the letter? Since the culprit was one of the more sympathetic bank employees, I dodged the question, noting instead that in the bank book it was printed quite clearly in trust for David Graeber. He, of course, replied that would only matter if she was dead. As it happened, the whole problem soon became academic. My mother did indeed die a few weeks later. Graeber's description is absolutely crushing, and certainly one that is way too familiar, trying to navigate through such bureaucratic mazes. But Graeber wondered why the academic literature on the role of bureaucracy in defining a society was so sparse. Why is it that when we encounter bureaucratic life, we experience not only the bureaucrats as stupid, but we feel ourselves more stupid as we engage with these situations? Graeber points out that it is really only in fiction, novels like Kafka's The Trial or Joseph Heller's Catch-22, that any real analysis of the idiocy and terror of bureaucracy are fully captured. But why, Graeber asks, are bureaucrats so stupid? And Graeber's answer couldn't be more relevant in a post-Luigi Mangione world. Graeber says that bureaucracies are invariably ways of managing situations that are already stupid because they are founded on structural violence. That is, bureaucracy is a way of managing a system based on pervasive inequality backed up by threats of physical harm for those who question too deeply. The purpose of the bureaucracy is to dehumanize the encounter, to limit what can and can't be done or said in the situation, to constrain expectations that would be immediately apparent to any human being who wasn't part of or dealing with a bureaucracy. The purpose of a bureaucracy is to make things stupid. As Upton Sinclair said, it is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. Graeber continues that while we don't think of nursing homes, banks, or HMOs as inherently violent institutions, yet they all stand as part of a system of property rights regulated and guaranteed by a government that ultimately rests on threats of force. And we are in a mass denial that the American way of life, for all its plentiful commodities, depends on the coercive threat of physical harm. The bureaucracy serves to deflect that fact from consciousness by making us feel that there are rules that can't be questioned. Look at the sign on the wall, bud. Not responsible for lost articles, not responsible for lost lives. Don't dare cross that line to my side of the table or I'll call the cops. In any bureaucratic nightmare, maybe even the most benign looking, it might be worth asking oneself, just what is it that is being hidden? What questions cannot be asked here? Recently, we had the spectacle of journalists Max Blumenthal and Sam Husseini being dragged out of an Anthony Blinken press conference because they dared to break press protocol by speaking up about Blinken's role in the U.S. genocide in Gaza. But whose protocols did they break? And whose press is it? Graeber's essays in this book are a good introduction to a mind that may at times seem interested in too many random shiny objects, but they all tie together into his conception of what the world could be, one of freedom and anarchist cooperation. The main fault of the book for me is the lack of any analysis of whether anarchist wishing, street fighting, mutual aid, and parallel societies are going to defeat capitalism. But that is an old question, and so read Graeber not for strategy, but for some of the unexpected everyday places to look for the contradictions of our society. I've been talking about the new collection of essays by David Graeber titled The Ultimate Hidden Truth of the World. This is Jack Shalom for Arts Express with host Prairie Miller.
And that's all we have time for today on Arts Express, expression in the arts. And if you'd like to express yourself too, you can write to us at theradiogoddess@gmail.com. Until next time, this is Prairie Miller leaving the station.